I'll turn it back over to you, Kev.
All right. As Barb said, welcome to the High 5 Live. Thank you for joining us, whether you signed in through the link like Randy did, and Dominic and Michelle and Chad, or you're out there viewing us on our Momentum page. Thank you for being here. We have a very exciting and interesting conversation tonight, I believe, that we've been talking about for a couple of months. And so tonight's the big night, and Barb and I are going to be going through and talking about Lewis Howes' book, The Mask of Masculinity. And as we were talking about this and thinking about this topic, it came up. So Barb, I think you read this book, I don't know, a couple months before you told me to read it.
I did.
And really it was a function of our conversation in class, our belief that vulnerability is not synonymous with weakness. In fact, that vulnerability is the new strong, right? And so what this book is about, so those of you that don't know who Lewis Howes is, he was an athlete. He was a professional athlete. He was a All-American decathlete in college and successful football player. He has a very successful podcast called The School of Greatness. And and so he also has a book by that name, The School of Greatness. And what he did with this book was he recognized that men in general have been taught to not be vulnerable. And what he realized is that we have a number of different masks that we put on, and really, the reason we put these masks on is to avoid, either to escape some kind of pain or to avoid something that we don't want to show about ourselves. And so that's what we're going to talk about tonight. We're going to talk about the masks in general, and then we're going to go into two specific ones. Actually, we're going to cover 4. There's 9 of them. We're going to talk around 2 of them, because what Barb and I found as we were talking about this, there was one that really connected with her, and then there's the one that I seem to maybe put on once or twice, always. And then we also had put out, in the Momentum group, we had put out a poll to see from both women and men, which masks did you want us to talk about? And what was interesting was that of the top 3 for the women and the top 3 for the men, there were 2 that were the same, and that would be the know-it-all mask and the alpha mask. So we're going to talk about those. And the other 2 were the one that Barb actually connects to, and the other one was the one that I connect to. So that's why we're covering those 4 tonight. It's going to be a fun 3 hours. So thank you for signing up to be with us for the next 3 hours. No, not 3 hours.
That gives you a clue of which mask Kevin wears.
Yeah, which mask do I wear? The Joker mask. Awesome. So let's get into it. It's going to go fast. It's an hour, and I think it's going to go really fast, but we're looking for a lot of really great conversation. So this is the first time that we've done this, I think, on Facebook this way. So Chad's going to be monitoring for us on Facebook. If you've got questions or feedback when we get to that part, you're certainly welcome to type those in. We will address those for you. If you are live on the call with us, if you registered, so like Randy, and I don't know who else is on through that, but if you've registered and you're online, you can actually unmute yourself and ask your questions and interact with Barb and myself. It makes it a lot more fun for us that way. So Chad, when I'll toss it back to you at a couple points, and if you have something that's really pressing, then by all means feel free to jump in. All right, so let's get started and talk about the masks of masculinity. So what are they? The first one is the Stoic mask, and I need to move that. So the man who wears the Stoic mask comes off really as a tough guy who just never shows any emotion whatsoever. The athlete mask, this is the person who defines their worth centered around their athletic ability, and everything for them is about competition. The material mask, this person defines their worth by their material possessions and their wealth. Sexual mask is defined is the person who defines their worth by their sexual prowess, how many people they've been with. The aggressive mask is the man who handles every emotional situation really with anger and physical aggression. This is the one that I relate to, the Joker mask. The man who wears the Joker mask hides behind humor and looks really to make people laugh, treats everything as though it were a joke. The invincible mask is the man who takes many risks, but doesn't really think about the things that can happen as a result of taking those risks. The know-it-all mask is the person who defines their self-worth because of their intellectual expertise, and they typically can't admit when they're wrong or that they don't know something. And then finally, the alpha mask is the man who always has to win and be the top dog. So those are the 9 masks, and we're going to pull up a poll question here in a minute. And what we would like, and so if you're on Facebook, we're not going to see those poll results, but what I'd like you to do is if you're in the Momentum group, I'd like you to just comment which are the masks that you find yourself wearing, all right? So Chad, if you'll go ahead and pull up, or Barb, if you'll pull up that poll. So if you're online with us here.
It's up.
Go ahead and vote. Which masks do you typically wear? And it's not uncommon for men to be wearing multiple masks. And ladies, you don't get by on this either. You wear masks too. They're not necessarily these masks, but what you might find, and what you probably saw as I was going through and talking about some of the different descriptions of what those masks are, what you may find is that some of those things actually apply to you as well. And of course, the reason for that is that we all have both male and female sides. We have a masculine side and a feminine side. Barb's going to talk a little bit about that when she talks about the mask that she typically wears. All right, almost everyone has voted here. I'm going to give you another couple seconds. Barb, you want to add anything before we kind of move on?
Yes. Just to reiterate what you just said, some of these masks I have worn for sure. And while we have different masks as females, we certainly all have those masks. And what's really interesting about this conversation is when we really get clear about the fact that we have masks is, do we need them? So the questions that I really want to focus on or have you ask yourself tonight as we go through this is, first off, exactly what we're talking about. What mask am I wearing? Second is, why do I feel like I need that mask, right? So this is where we do the work. This is where we get real with ourselves. And whether you say it out loud or at least say it to yourself, why do I feel like I need that? And where did that need come from? Because, and I'm probably getting ahead of you, Kevin, so it's payback because you always do this to me, is likely that came from a story that somebody told you or sold you along the way, and it's not even your story about why you need that mask. And then the third one, which is where we'll get to tonight, is what's possible if I take it off? And when we look at what's possible, it's really important to look at what's the worst case scenario, right? Because so often we think it's going to be really bad if we take it off. And if we really think about what the worst case scenario is, it's really not that bad. And then now we transition to what's the best case scenario, what's possible truly in my life if I take that mask off. So those are the questions I want us to really focus on tonight as we go through this. And I'm super excited about talking about the Stoic mask with y'all. You ready for me to?
Yeah, let's go ahead and end the polling here and just kind of see what came up. So it looks like we've got some Stoics, some athletes. We got an aggressive, somebody that handles things with anger and physical aggression, and couple of several people with the Joker connecting. Those are my peeps. Chad, what are you seeing out there on Momentum?
We got a couple Stoics out in Momentum as well.
Okay. Well, so good. And this again, like Barb said, this is where we get to really do the work, right? We can bring that down. All right. So this is where we want to open it up to you and talk a little bit about that. So if you answered about the mask that you wear, let's talk a little bit about that, because the first step, I believe, of making the choice, because it is all about choice, to be more vulnerable, the first step is really what we do in our 3-day class, right? Which is to wake people up. So awareness of the masks that you're wearing, and just being cognizant of the fact that, you know what, I do wear that mask, is where we start with really understanding, you know, how is it benefiting you to wear that mask, and what would it be like to take it off? So, of course, being the leaders that you are, those of you that are out there with us, who would like to go first?
Hey, good evening.
Hey, good evening, Randy.
Hey, how are you? It looks like there's 3 of me on here, but actually I've got a couple of coworkers on as well.
Great.
Awesome.
Welcome.
Yeah. So one of the Randys is actually Chad Agustin, and the other one is Andy Hanlon.
Awesome. Well, welcome.
Welcome, gentlemen.
So which one were we starting on? Just kind of in general, or
Yeah.
talking about?
Which mask do you find yourself wearing initially, Randy?
Wow. You know, I clicked 3, Stoic. Well, 2 for sure. Stoic and Joker really were kind of the 2. And it's funny, I don't really wear the same masks at work and the same ones at home, you know? So kind of different.
Absolutely. You know, one of the things, so and this would be, Barb, this would be a good place for us too to kind of share the conversations that you and I had about the masks that we wear. And so thank you, Randy. I'm going to come back to you here in just a second. You know, in preparing for this talk tonight, Barb and I were going through and talking about the different masks and which ones we find ourselves wearing. And I find myself almost always wearing the Joker mask. Michelle, she's on the call. She might, and Barb, I don't know, you and Chad might even suggest or think that maybe on occasion I might put on a know-it-all mask. That might have happened once or twice.
Once or twice.
No, I know Michelle. She got my back. And when Barb and I were talking really about the Joker mask and why is it and where did that come from, right? I actually thought about that for a long time and went back to, it probably started from when I was a young child. And my mom and dad had their own business, and they worked a lot of hours, and Dad came home frequently. He wasn't necessarily an angry person, although he certainly he could put the aggressive mask on occasion. But frequently he came home late in the day after work, and he just wasn't in a very good mood. And I always wanted to make my dad laugh. And so I think that's probably when I started putting that Joker mask on, because what I found was that if I got my dad laughing, it was unlikely that he was going to put on that aggressive mask and explode about something. Who knows what it might be. And then as I got older, so that's probably where I started with wanting to make my dad laugh. And then as I began to get older, and I won't say I was bullied, but I was bullied. I was always the overweight. I was a little fat kid, and I was made fun of for being fat a lot. Now, luckily, I was athletic enough that even though I was overweight, I could still do some of the, I could play kickball, I could play baseball. And so I wasn't the fat kid and got picked last, right? I typically got picked somewhere around the middle in the schoolyard games. But what I found, getting back to the Joker, was that if I could make people laugh, a couple things happened. Number one, they quit making fun of me for being fat. And number two, what it felt like was that they would like me. And when Barb said that to me, when we were talking about this, and you said, Barb, that, well, yeah, if you can make people laugh, they would like you. I mean, that just kind of hit me right in the pit of my stomach, because that's exactly what it was. And the barrier that when I went through my intensive class, the barrier that I wanted to break through was wanting to be liked. So what I find is that when I put that Joker mask on, it's to make people laugh. It makes them want me to be around. It makes them like me. And it also many times keeps me from getting too serious. And that's one of the things that you'll find, ladies and gentlemen, as you start to identify the masks that you're wearing, is they really are there to cover something up. You wear it for some reason, looking to escape something or looking to overcome some flaw or deficiency that you perceive you have. And in reality, it doesn't really benefit. And in some cases, it actually can become damaging, because, you know, with the Joker mask, everything's a joke. And there are certainly times that it's not appropriate. And I find myself putting my foot in my mouth, not as much as I used to. Thank you for that filter, Barb. Yeah, but so anyway, that's the one that really struck me the most as we were talking about it. So I share that for two reasons. Number one, to demonstrate that, again, we all wear these masks, and the vulnerability, telling that story just now, the choice to take the mask off is a choice. And again, what this whole conversation tonight is really about being vulnerable. That vulnerability is strength. So there's that. What do you got, Barb?
Well, and I want to add to what you said. So first off, thank you for sharing that, because it was vulnerable. And one of the other reasons that we put masks on, and especially we do this early on in our life, is we want to belong. We want to fit in. And we believe that by putting on a mask that is like other people's masks, right, we'll all fit in and we'll be accepted. So for you, it was wanting to be liked. And similarly, I've certainly worn a lot of masks as it related to being accepted, because I had a fear of rejection in that. And the mask, there's several of these that I relate to. The interesting thing for me, the one I want to talk about real quick, is the Stoic mask. And not even so much about me, although I've certainly worn that mask myself for many, many years. Very stoic, had to fit in the corporate world, very professional. I joke a lot that I was born 40, born serious. And the person, though, that I want to talk about tonight, and I do have his permission. The last time we got together, he said I can talk about him anytime that I want to in our training, and that's my ex-husband. And you talk about stoic. He was the poster child of stoic. And to the extent, and I didn't have the skills that I have today or the knowledge that I have today when we were married, and I didn't know how to draw him out. And I didn't even realize truly what the mask was in that time that we were married. And we were married for a long time, 17 years. And because of that stoic mask, I never knew how he really felt. I never could get him to talk to me. One time he actually said to me that when I was really doing a lot of work on myself, he said, I know what my issues are. I don't want to deal with them. And it was just it was rare for him to even smile. And it was really difficult to have a meaningful relationship in that, and with him in that environment. And so understanding now, I would have had some more tools to deal with that. But then I just was like, I don't know what to do with you, because I want somebody that I can actually talk to and will actually share what they're feeling with me. And so guys, understand that. As women, we actually do want somebody that we can share with. And we don't always need, you've heard this before, right? We don't always need you to solve our problems. We sometimes just need you to listen to us. And there is the vice versa. It's like, come tell us what's going on, and we can be there to support you just like you're there to support us. And that, to me, is what a partnership is. And that's what I'm looking for in a relationship moving forward, because it will be a whole lot more fulfilling knowing that. So that's my stoic mask. And it's also been, as I've taken off my own personal stoic mask, it's been a whole lot more fun. I would say the one that I probably would get tagged with once in a while is that know-it-all mask as well. So I can own that.
Maybe once or twice.
Once or twice.
Yeah. So thank you, Barb.
Thank you.
Really, really helpful to understand that from a female perspective, right? Because it really is a partnership, and it's hard. So as men, we've been taught from a very young age. So we weren't born with these masks on. We were taught by people that we love and care about in many cases that this is what it means to be a man. And how you behave. And we watched our role models do these same behaviors. And so to take the mask off, to be aware enough that A, I'm wearing a mask, and B, to make the decision that says, you know what, it's not benefiting me to wear this mask. It will benefit me to take it off. But we need, if we're in those relationships, we need our partners to help us see the fact that we're wearing the mask, and to help us, in some cases, take it off. So Randy, I want to come back to you, buddy. So you mentioned the Stoic mask and the Joker mask, and then you said, but you find you wear some different masks at home. So if you are unmuted, there you are.
Yep.
Where do you find? Do you wear the Stoic mask and the Joker mask at home or work, or what do you find?
No, most of the time, at work, I'm more of the Stoic mask. Right. And at home, around family, friends, it's more the Joker piece. What's weird is that the older that I get, I see the Joker mask a lot less often than I used to. Right. I don't know. I'm not really sure, why that is. I think it's, I don't know. I don't seem to get as silly, even at home as I used to. And I'm not really, I don't know if it's just kind of with age or whatever it is. I'm not really sure, but I find I don't know, less of that and more of the Stoic taking over.
Yeah. And so thank you for sharing that. It's an interesting phenomenon, right? We talk about it in our class about how, we're so in a hurry for kids to be more adult-like. Why not we be more childlike? And that description that you just gave, right? That playful, fun, jovial, joking person as we age and go through what some people would call the grind. I would call the opportunities of life. We tend to put on that more serious face, that more stoic face. So the question is really, how is that benefiting you? And so kudos to you for having the courage and the vulnerability to put it out there, that you recognize it. And now the next opportunity, the opportunity for next step and for growth is to say, okay, so how is that benefiting me at work? And that's one other thing that we'll talk about here, especially when we talk about the alpha mask. Is that sometimes these masks, they actually have some beneficial characteristics to them. So it's not all negative, right? But understanding, when am I using it from a powerful position as opposed to when am I using it to hide from something? Very good. You got anything of any interest out there in Facebook world, Chad?
Yeah, I mean, Christy was remarking a very, similar story to Barb that, her husband is wearing the Stoic mask, but also that it changed, that became a stronger mask for him at some point.
Okay.
So definitely sharing some familiarity to Barb's story as well.
Okay, great, thanks.
That would also, hi, this is Michelle, that would also correlate to Randy's story, how he used to wear the Joker mask more often than he does, and now he's more stoic. And said perhaps it was a function of getting older, and maybe that's what's happening with Christy's husband as well then, because she said he wasn't always like that. So maybe that's something to address at some point, is why we talk about it in class, but more specifically why it seems to happen so much to men as they get older, that they get so much more serious and let go of the lighter things.
So I'm going to put you on the spot here for a second, since you have the privilege of living with me, and and you get to observe the masks that I put on occasion.
Yes, I do occasionally.
What's
Barb
that?
said, remember, Barb said we had to play nice.
I'm absolutely playing nice. So what's it from the woman, from your perspective as a woman? What is it? How does it make you feel, and what does it do to our relationship when you observe me? Not and it doesn't have to be the Joker mask, but when you see me wearing a mask, how does that affect our relationship?
So I don't struggle with the Joker mask, because you make me laugh and I like that. And oftentimes one or both of us can be way too serious, and that lightens the mood. So I'm good with that. I guess the Stoic mask, well, you even kind of wear the Alpha mask sometimes. But whichever one of those, or somewhere in the middle, and I believe this is a characteristic. To say it's a characteristic only of men is a very strong generalization. I know a lot of women who do it too. There's a part of that causes you to shut down, and it's either because you don't want to say the wrong thing, or you don't know, and so you don't want to say something you're going to regret, or you don't know what to say, and you shut down. And ultimately what that equates to is shutting me out, and that makes me feel sad, mad, frustrated. It also doesn't do you any favors relative to our relationship. And I think that any man or woman who has someone in their life that does that, puts on that Stoic mask or that Alpha mask, probably can relate to those emotions. It's hurtful. And to say, and then for you to say it's not personal, it's just what I do. It's the most personal relationship in our lives. There's no way not to take it personally.
Okay. Thank you.
Yep.
Yeah, it's as Barb said earlier, it's definitely a partnership, right? And so being in a relationship, this is the beauty of having somebody in your life. And so I'm speaking about myself, but I'm also speaking to those of you that are on and listening. It's the beauty of having your loved ones go through the same training that you have gone through to get you to this place, because it allows us, although we're far from perfect in our relationship, but we have some different understanding and some different tools that allow us to communicate in a way that many couples don't have. And so just another reason to make sure that your loved ones have the same experience that you got to have at High5. So let's talk about.
If I might jump in real quick
Sure.
on that, and I'm addressing one of the comments on the Facebook Live, in that her husband's gotten more stoic, and a lot of it revolves around the kids, and so it's the focus and the energy is going to the kids. And in this case, he has not had the same awarenesses in the training that she has. And so what do you do, right? And until you get him into the next High5 class, what do you do? And not all hope is lost. However, with all of this, it takes a big dose of courage because it will require some vulnerability. So the first thing that I would say for probably a lot of men and women, we don't even know and can't even self-identify some of the masks that we wear. They're blind spots to us. And it isn't until somebody has the courage to actually say how they feel when that mask shows up that it's like, oh. Now, a word of caution, sometimes they don't want to hear it, and we don't want to hear it. I mean, right, that's showing up. However, if we don't have the courage to talk about what we're feeling and what's going on in that relationship and how that mask is impacting us, we don't even have the opportunity to create something different. And while it can be scary as hell to actually have some of these conversations until you get more comfortable, right, and you develop that partnership that we've been talking about with that level of knowledge and the shared experience, it's going to require a different level of courage. And when you do that, you at least create the new possibility or create the possibility to have a different level of relationship. Because when things change in our lives, and that's why I asked the question is, did anything change? And when even from the time when we're dating to when we get married, something can change, right? There's just a different level of responsibility. It could be when we have kids, whatever, we've got a new job, we bought a house, and now we've got the responsibility of the house. Whatever it is, those life changes can create the feeling that we've got to put on a different mask as well. So there's lots of things. It can be from our childhood, like we've talked about, or it could be the environment that we work in, the culture that we work in, that's creating that. So anyway, there is hope, but it's going to require some courage.
Yeah, and so thanks, Barb. And one of the things, and I would encourage you all to pick up a copy of this book. It really is an interesting book. At the end of each chapter, after he talks about kind of what the mask is, he talks about what can we do. And we're going to give you a sense of that here with the know-it-all and the alpha. But for some of those other masks, he talks about what can men do right now in order to begin practicing taking that mask off. And for the women in their lives, it talks about what can you as their partner do to help them once they have that awareness, to help them take that mask off. So let's talk a little bit about this one that apparently Barb and I know something about. That's the know-it-all mask. And he starts the chapter off with this quote from John Wooden. It's what you learn after you know it all that actually counts. And I thought that was pretty good. We talk about in class all the time that there is an equal amount for everything that you can see. There's an equal amount that you can't see. For everything that you know, there's at least as much that you don't know. It is impossible for anyone to truly know it all. But the know-it-all mask, the man that puts that on really is looking to cover up our ignorance and insecurity. And as you can see there, it says it lets us walk around with a little bit of emotional armor in place based on the little bit of knowledge we've uncovered in our lives. Because certainly one of the scariest vulnerabilities for men is that we're supposed to have all the answers for some reason. We're supposed to know what to do. We're supposed to know how mechanical things work and how plumbing works and electricity and cars and manly things. And it's an insecurity to say, you know what, I don't have a flipping clue what that is. And it somehow it makes us feel less masculine if we don't know how to do masculine things. So our tendency is in any environment, even if we don't know what the hell we're talking about, we'll make some shit up and act like we do, because that's just the way it works. And the question we have is, how's that working out for you? One of the people, this was one of the most interesting chapters because And throughout the whole book, what he's really doing is he's sharing the lessons that he's learned through all these amazing people that he talked to and interviewed on his podcast, The School of Greatness. And one of the people that he talks about in this chapter is Mike Rowe. And you may recognize Mike Rowe from Deadliest Catch. He's certainly, most people know him from Dirty Jobs, right? He's the guy that goes out and does, the grossest, dirtiest jobs. And he's a fascinating guy. And one of the things that he talked about, and because of all the things that he's done in his life, I mean, it talks about that he's been an opera singer. He's worked on foreign policy for the government. He's done all kinds of things. And as a result, he's considered to be very wise. And in the podcast, Lewis asks him, he said, what is the secret to wisdom? And his response was one that kind of caught him off guard. And he said, well, you have 2 ears and 1 mouth. So what is he saying? He's saying, listen twice as much as you talk. That it's impossible to learn anything from anyone when you're talking. And the opportunity to truly learn. So if we go into it with an understanding that we really don't know much at all, in the grand scheme of things, none of us really knows all that much. We've had some experiences. We believe some things to be true. But, some of the greatest philosophers of all time, whether it's Einstein or Socrates, what they know is that they didn't know anything. And so the thing about House says that everybody has something to teach you if you're willing to learn. And if you're willing to close your 1 mouth and open your 2 ears, you stand a much greater chance of actually learning something. So Barb, you want to add anything to this before I kind of go to the next page about what can we do about it?
Just a funny story popped into my head, and talking about even the expectation from, as a female, that men should know about certain things. So I'm creating, right, perpetuating, right, some of these masks. So I woke up one morning and I was heading out to go to the gym. It was 5 o'clock in the morning, and there was a skunk in my yard. And the first thing I did was I called my brother. And it pissed me off because he didn't answer the phone. And I sent him a text, and I was like, what do I do? I needed to get to the gym. And I got to the gym, and it's a funny story. And his response was something like, catch it, or it was some joker response. But why would I think that he would have all of this knowledge about what to do with this skunk in my yard? And
he's just a skunk whisperer.
It just cracked me up. I do also have a comment on the skunk whisperer on Facebook, and Rhonda said, isn't the insecurity thinking that you're supposed to know it all? And it is it is an absolute insecurity that we think we're supposed to know it all. And this one messed me up for a long time, because even as a woman, especially in the professional world, I thought I was supposed to know it all. I thought I was supposed to have all of the answers. And one of the best days of my life is when I figured out I didn't have to have all of the answers. And it was like 3 million tons were lifted off my shoulders when I didn't have to do that. So That's what I got.
He tells a story in the book that this one really struck me. So again, my dad was not a car guy, right? I'm one of those people that, I don't know, when the car breaks down on the side of the road, what do? You get out and you open up the hood and you look inside. I don't know what I'm looking for. I think there's supposed to maybe a big red flashing light. I'm broken. But, so I wasn't around cars. I don't know anything about cars, but he tells a story in the book about the guy, whoever he was interviewing. He said when he was a kid, his dad told him they were fixing something in the house, and he said, son, go out and get a Phillips head screwdriver out of the toolbox. Kid didn't know what a Phillips head screwdriver was, but he didn't want to act like he didn't know. It wasn't okay to just say, Dad, I'd never heard of a Phillips screwdriver before. What is that? No, he went out in the garage and just started looking around for things that maybe could possibly be a Phillips screwdriver, because God forbid, you're a man, you don't know, what tool I'm talking about. But that is literally from the time we are little children, we are expected to know things that we could have no possibility of knowing. So what can we do about it, right? So men, what we can do is practice. And all these things that we're talking about, it's not about just recognizing, okay, yeah, I got this mask on, I'm just going to take it off. No, you've been practicing the way you are for a long time. It's going to take some time and effort to practice the new behaviors, practice taking it off. So whenever you find yourself in that environment, whether it's in a meeting where you just, you feel like you got to just be filling the space with your own voice, right? No, practice listening twice as much as you speak. You do have 2 ears and 1 mouth, so practice that. Go into those conversations with the relationships that you're in, whether it's personal or professional, and practice listening. Be humble. All right. Humility is the virtue that allows you to become wise. Another great piece of advice that I got a long time ago was, instead of making statements, start asking questions. Because when you ask questions, when you make statements to show how smart you are, nobody cares. But when you ask questions, that's when you have the opportunity to actually learn. And so the next bullet there, be open to new thoughts, ideas, and strategies, even if you don't agree with them, right? The question that Barb taught me, I don't know, a year or two ago, actually probably about a year ago now, is to simply start asking the question, well, what else is possible? So when you ask the question, what else is possible, it truly does open up that new space of possibility that maybe there's something there that I'm not aware of. So even if your BS, your belief system, that's what BS stands for, your belief system. If your belief system says that things work a certain way and you don't agree with it, just be open to the possibility that, you know what, maybe they know something that you don't. And this is probably the best line I saw in this chapter. When in doubt, shut up. If you don't really know, instead of making some stuff up, then just shut up and let somebody else who actually does know what's going on share their knowledge. And that's really the way to become wise, is to be quiet and listen to others. So ladies, what can you do? Remind him it's better to be kind than right all the time. So Michelle, I give you permission to remind me that it's better to be kind than right all the time, but you can let me be right once in a while. And with that, ladies, another piece of advice is to be patient. Let him get all the way through, and instead of just responding to what he says, share how it feels to be around somebody who acts like they're God and who has to always be right. So talk about your feelings and how it makes you feel to help him get that awareness around, okay, yeah, that probably doesn't make me, I see how me being that know-it-all probably is not helping our relationship. And then again, the one that you see there in white, let him know that you won't love or care about him less if he doesn't know something. It's okay if we don't have all the answers. We're not supposed to have all the answers.
Hey, Cav, can I add something?
Yes, please.
So this is an interesting one because this happened both ways in my relationship with my ex. And I have witnessed it a lot in couples, which is one side of the couple is telling a story, and it's not exactly how the other side of the couple remembers the story. And so what I would do, and I'll own this on my side, I would correct the story. Well, and this probably works even better in the alpha mass that we're going to talk about next, but I just stripped, right, some credibility and masculinity from that. And why did it matter, right? And what I now even realize is that was just my truth and his truth, and who knows what really was the truth. But recognize when you're doing that. So if your significant other is telling a story and you remembered a little bit different, ask yourself, do those details or does that information really matter? And yeah, that's where we stop. And I like the shut up one that you had.
Yeah.
That's good advice for all of us.
When in doubt, shut up.
That's good advice for all of us.
I agree. Thanks. All right. The alpha mask. So the alpha mask, a lot of what we think of as alpha behavior. So remember, the alpha is the top dog, right? Has to win at all cost. If you're not alpha, you're beta, and second place is first loser, that kind of thing. What he talks about in this chapter is that a lot of what we think of as alpha behavior is simply a cover for hollowness. And I thought this quote by the governor of Missouri was really interesting about this. He says, "Arrogance is the armor worn by hollow men. Their bragging and puffery is usually a display meant to mask their weakness." And yeah. So again, this is the kind of person who has to win, who has to get everything he wants, who's controlling, and for whom it's either his way or no way. The interesting thing to me in this chapter is he talked to the guy who was the FBI's top hostage negotiator for like 25 years. And he talks about how generally in a hostage situation, the hostage taker generally is a very alpha type character. And what he said was that in a hostage negotiation, it's not about letting the other person win. He said, because the order that we have it here on the slide, he said, is really not what is important to the alpha. It's really about control. And so you let them think that they're in control, that actually winning was like third most important thing. So, most alphas, when you strip away the mask, what they really are is insecure, self-centered, outcome-driven people who have little time for people or feelings. Now, earlier I said something about these masks, that sometimes putting on these masks is not always a negative thing. They're certainly in business, and Randy, you might actually speak to this in business because of your position. But in many cases in business, taking that alpha attitude, at least initially, there are some positive things that come out of wanting to be the alpha, wanting to take charge, wanting to win, wanting to take control and make things happen. So from that perspective, it can be a very positive characteristic, but it's when it goes too far and when it really is there to cover up the hollowness is when it becomes a problem. Anything you want to add, Barb, about alpha?
Well, what you just said was interesting, because I think about it as being an entrepreneur and running my own business. There is definitely a sense of alpha in that. Now, the more people that we bring onto the team, the more that I can share that. But I needed to tap into that, to have the desire really and the courage to actually start High5.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And I think if we think about, stuff that we teach in the class, we think about DISC, we think about the D, the driver, the domineering personality. That's generally who shows up with this mask on, right? And certainly I think we would have to agree that the D's in business can get a lot done, but what we also know is that that strength overused, that whole thing about strength overused becomes a weakness. That big wind of the D, as we like to say, can become a hurricane force wind, and as a result, it just leaves a lot of devastation and dead bodies in the wake. Yeah. So. So again, it's not that it's bad. It's just an understanding of why am I choosing and how am I applying this mask in any given situation.
Yeah, and it goes back, Kev, to again what we teach about the story. So what is the story that I'm telling myself that is creating the mask, that the feeling that I need to put the mask on, and is that story benefiting me? Because if the story is not benefiting me and it's not benefiting others, it needs to go.
Yeah.
And that's where we get to, and that's scary sometimes to change those stories.
Absolutely. So what can we do, men? Instead of looking for evidence that your way is the only way, it's okay to give somebody else's idea a shot, and not for the purpose of, okay, fine, I'll let them prove that it won't work. No.
Uh-oh. Everybody freeze up, or is it just
Sometimes other people do have good ideas. It said I had an unstable connection there for a minute.
Yeah.
Work for a win-win situation, right? It doesn't have to be win-lose. There is always an opportunity for win-win. You might just have to look for it. Look for things that unite instead of separate. And then again, listen, connect, and hear other people's ideas. So back to that question that Barb taught me, right? What else is possible? Ask yourself, what would be possible if everybody could win? And this is not about everybody gets a trophy, right? We're not sympathy voting people. But what if we truly could create situations where everybody wins? What then would be possible for you, your family, and the world around you? Ladies, here's what you can do. You can let him know, I don't need to agree with you to love you. What was your statement that you taught me a couple months ago, Barb? I love you even though I don't understand you.
Mm-hmm.
Something like that.
Yeah, this actually sounds better than that in this moment.
Yeah, I don't need to agree with you to love you. Yeah, and let him know again. Connect to that feeling. So if you think about what the mask is really covering up, it's covering up hollowness. So let him know what it feels like when he's being the man instead of being gentle, caring, loving, kind, those things that you really look for. And the other thing that I didn't put it on the screen here, but I think it's important that he talks about, he says, when the next time you notice, ladies, the next time you notice that he's put on his alpha mask, don't back down. So many times when the alpha shows up, it's in a very domineering way. And the coaching is don't back down when you see that. Your voice matters, and express it. It's important that you be heard and that you both can win.
Stand in your power, ladies.
Absolutely. All right. So what are you learning? What are you getting out of this? It's another opportunity for us to chat for a minute. So if any of the three Randys would like to speak, we would love to hear from our guests as well. Chad, you got anything on Facebook? What are people learning? What are they saying?
Rana was definitely having some connection to the know-it-all mask for sure.
Okay. Thank you. Any of the Randys?
Hey, so I'll jump in. I think one of the biggest takeaways from the class was the win-win piece. But I will say it's also one of the things that oftentimes you forget quickly when you leave the class and don't practice it as much as you should, if that makes sense.
Sure.
I don't know. Oftentimes, I think we do get into a situation where we think that in order to win, someone else has to lose, and that's just not the case. And I don't know. I really don't know how we fall into that sometimes. But I know on that, talking about the alpha mask too. It is pretty prevalent in the business world, corporate world. And to your point, I mean, there's a lot of good or a lot of positive things about your career or the trajectory of your career that can be, that can definitely benefit from you wearing that mask sometimes. But I think the point is you have to kind of know how much you want to wear it.
Yeah.
And when it's appropriate.
Absolutely.
And I sometimes I think it's easy for people to to not realize that, and it just becomes like an like an everyday part of their personality.
Absolutely, it's the uniform that they put on, right? It's the mask. They put it on because it's gotten them somewhere, and they use it in every circumstance, and that's where it becomes the strength overused. So absolutely right. Thanks, Randy, and thank you for participating and sharing tonight. Anybody else like to share what you're getting out of this?
Yeah, I'd like to expound on that a little bit.
Okay.
I notice I've used more than one mask before. So on top of what Randy was saying, in the corporate world, it seems like I'm going to wear whatever mask that's being presented to me. It's almost like whatever game is being played, I'm going to play that game with you. I don't know which one it is. Are we playing the Joker game? Are we playing the Stoic game? Whatever game it is, I'm going to trump that, and I'm going to play at your level. Whatever you give me. If you're vulnerable to me, I'll be vulnerable to you. But vulnerable is looked at as a weakness in the corporate world, and that's tough to get around sometimes. So when I hear that it's okay to wear the alpha mask, I look at that a little bit differently. It's okay to have alpha characteristics, but not the mask. The mask is something that's used to hide something by definition.
Yep.
So if you're hiding something with the outlook of being an alpha, that's what's wrong with it. If you're hiding certain vulnerabilities or certain truths that would benefit a relationship by whatever mask you're wearing, that's where I feel it's detrimental. But to use any of these with, like you're saying, the strength overuse, using any of these to the point where you're actually holding something back, that's when it becomes labeled a mask, in my opinion.
Yeah, great point, Dominic. Thank you for that awareness, because you're absolutely right. It's the characteristics, those alpha characteristics that can be beneficial, but you're right. The mask is to totally cover something up. Anybody else?
I just want to say on to what both of these gentlemen just said, and it's those characteristics, as long as they're positive and we're not creating a detriment to somebody else.
Right.
And it's so critical that we become aware of that. And the way that we do that is through looking at how we're showing up in the world. What masks are we wearing? And it requires a lot of courage to even look at ourselves, right? And are we leaving those dead bodies in the wake? Are we creating more problems? How are we showing up in our relationships with people? And I love what Randy said in terms of understanding it's about the win-win. Somebody doesn't have to lose for me to win. I can go out there and play my A game, and I can be the cheerleader for every single other person to play their A game. And Randy asked, where did that come from? And we were taught that somebody had to lose for us to win, versus being taught that we just all go out and we play our hearts out. And yeah, there might be somebody that has a higher score at the end, and it's all about how you play the game. And when we play at that level, it creates new results for us. So beautiful. I love that. Thanks, Randy.
Absolutely.
And Dominic for that clarification, because you're right. It's the hiding piece. It's the mask is the hiding piece. So
Yep.
Love that.
All right. Well, let's land this bad boy. So what now? Well, gentlemen, for those of you on the call, here's my call to action for you. So in order to drop your mask and get more vulnerable, you have to practice. It's like anything else. You're only going to get good at it when you practice. So here's my challenge for you. And those of you that are watching on Momentum, I'm challenging you with the same thing. I want you to go out to our High5 Momentum group, and I want you to get vulnerable. I want you to post for the group what masks you've been wearing and share with them what are the consequences in your professional and personal life that putting that mask on has created for you. That's it. So take the first step. The first step is choose to take the mask off, choose to get vulnerable, because what you will find is that when you truly buy into the fact that vulnerability is not synonymous with weakness, in fact, vulnerability is the new strong, what you'll find is that by being vulnerable, it actually attracts people to you. It actually creates the opportunity for better relationships, more authentic relationships. So that's my my call to action. Are there any questions before we wrap this thing up? Anybody out in Facebook land? Any of the Randys, Dominic, Michelle, Chad?
Just a thank you. Also to everybody who joined us on Facebook Live tonight as well. And that's where we'll be doing all of our High5 lives from now on. We're going to make sure that we get it out, make it easy for everybody to participate as well. But thanks for showing up tonight.
Yeah.
So I would like to, I don't have a question necessarily. I want to point out, I believe it's important to point out that trainers are people too, and that and that there might be a lot of belief that we are know-it-alls, that we have all the answers, that we sit up in an ivory tower and tell everybody how to do all this stuff because we think we know, because that's just who we are. We practice this every day. The only thing we have on anybody else on this conversation is that we've just been practicing it longer. So we're not perfect. We're not here to tell you you're doing it wrong and we're doing it right. We're just here to offer some thoughts, suggestions, open up your minds and hearts a little bit to other possibilities, knowing that we still have the exact same struggles that you all have.
Yeah. And thank you, Michelle. And with awareness, so all we're doing is creating awareness, right? We're showing you we're showing you what we believe to be true, so it creates new awareness so that you can then go out and choose, because with awareness comes new opportunities to go make different choices for yourself. All right, well, if there's no questions, let's talk about, and that was a great lead-in, Michelle, because, you know, talking about practicing. How do you practice? There are some people on the call tonight that have not been through one of our 3-day intensive classes. So we offer these classes to the public about 4 times a year. Here's our upcoming schedule for our intensive class. The next one's in March in San Diego. We've got one in Chicago this year in May. We've got a couple more in San Diego towards the end of the year. And if you have been through the intensive 3-day class, then the next opportunity for you is to go to the Evolve class. We have one coming up in San Diego in April. Very limited number of seats there. We only have 20 people in those classes. So if you want to practice being more vulnerable, taking those masks off and getting to your next level, that's what that class is about. And if you've been to both of them, so some of the people on the call, they've been to it. They've been to the 3-day class. They've been to Evolve. Well, we got something for you too. We're working on some stuff. But you know what? Michelle brought up a great point. If you really want to go next level, reach out to us about becoming a trainer. Reach out to us about doing one of these High5 lives with us, because the best way to really practice and get really good at this stuff is to teach other people how to do it. So there's always a next level. There's always another class. It may not be a classroom variety, but there's always another class and another opportunity. So, our next High5 Live, as Barb said, is on February the 20th. It is another Tuesday night, I believe. It is going to be on Facebook Live in the Momentum group, and you'll see a lot of notifications about that. I don't know what our topic is. We put out some questions to the group, so we are working on our topics for our upcoming calls. So we'll be posting that here. Stay tuned for that. We also wanted tonight to do something special. So we've got a special offer for those of you that attended live either on Facebook or here with us. And that is anybody who signs up for the next class, for any class, in the next 24 hours. So between now and this time tomorrow night, and mentions that they were on this class or on this call, we're going to give them 6 months of our High5 Dream Guide program. So the Dream Guide program is something that we came out with this year as partially as a sustainability tool to work with our graduates in helping them truly fulfill their dreams and practice some of this stuff. So that's another thing that you could do. If you've been to the intensive class and you've been to Evolve, but you've not enrolled in the Dream Guide program, that's a next step thing. So anybody who signs up for a class in the next 24 hours, they get 6 months of the Dream Guide program and a $150 voucher that they can use towards their airfare to come to the class. And if you can't make the decision in the next 24 hours, but you decide the next 48 hours that you want to come, then we'll let you pick either the 6 months of the Dream Guide program, or you can choose that airfare voucher just for being with us on the call tonight. So sometimes showing up has its rewards. Yes?
The Dream Guide program is worth like $700 or something like that.
Yeah, it's in that range. The 6 months of the Dream Guide program is whatever 75 times 5 plus. Yeah, it's like $500 or $600. Absolutely, it's not an insignificant value for sure.
Mm-hmm.
All right. So as we always do, our outcome is to deliver value. So we know that when you give us your time, we can never give that back to you. And so our outcome is always to exchange value for your time. And what we're focused on is delivering tens. What I'm interested, though, in is what is your truth? So on a scale from 1 to 10, how valuable was the time you spent with us tonight? So if you're out in Facebook world, if you'll post those out there, scale from 1 to 10, what was most valuable? And then what had the most value to you? So of the things that we talked about, what did you find to be most valuable? And Randy, I'm gonna go ahead and call you out one more time, brother. And if your guests want to toss in their scale here too, we'd love to hear from them. So on a scale from 1 to 10 tonight, Randy, how valuable was this?
It was a 10 for me. I haven't been able to attend a lot of, you guys have put on a lot of, different calls and things over the past year, really, since it's almost been a year since I've taken the class. And I haven't been able to attend all of those for a lot of different reasons, but mostly because I didn't choose to, right? For whatever reason. But, I chose to tonight, and I thought it would be, I thought it's important to get back to kind of focusing on the right things. And so for me, this was really good for me. And it was fun inviting, Chad and Andy to kind of participate. Obviously I'm interested in trying to get them involved and get them to one of the classes too. And so just wanted to kind of give them a little peek.
Awesome. That's a great way to do it. So thank you so much for that. And if Chad or Andy, if you want to unmute yourselves, if you want to share how valuable it was for you, that would be helpful for us. If not, we'll call you out later. But,
we'll see you in a class.
Yeah, we will see you in a class.
We did get on Facebook. We got Lily Darling said, "Thanks for sharing all the value, guys. Learned bunches." So thank you, Lily.
Thank you, Lily Darling. All right.
Well, hey guys, can you hear me?
Yeah.
This is Andy. I'm sorry I couldn't figure out how to unmute the button there, so I don't know. This is my first deal with something like this, and I want to let y'all know that I feel like this is very neat, very interesting to me. So, Randy's talked about it a few times, and it was making me think the whole time I'm sitting here listening about the different masks and the discussions there, and what you were putting out there. I'm sitting here thinking about all the things that I've dealt with through my life, and the different ways that I've worn the different masks myself, from being a child and growing up as a teenager to in my 20s, my 30s, and now my 40s, and what I'm even faced with business today. So thank you for that. I very valuable to me.
Great. Thank you so much for being here. We appreciate it.
Thanks, Andy.
Yeah, Andy. And if you're on Facebook, go find us, High5 Momentum, the number 5 Momentum. We'd love to get you involved in that group as well, so you can get some more good stuff.
I already went there and liked it.
Awesome. Well, we will get you added in there.
Thanks.
You bet. All right, Chad. Now we got to hear from you. Chad don't know how to unmute himself. All right, I'm just messing with you, Chad. All right, so moving on. That's it. Barb, you got any last words?
No, thank you very much for being with us. And of course, my farewell is always choose joy.
Yeah, so thank you everybody for your participation. I know we ran over a little bit tonight, but I'm glad you found value in it. And we absolutely are here for you. We're on your team, and just know that go out there and be kind and be love. So thank you. We'll see you again on February 20th, if not before. Have a great night.
Thank you.
Bye.
All right,
Bye-bye.
thanks, guys. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.